We're going to go over what I believe every patriot ought to be doing on the intelligence front. In the 1830s, there was a fort built down in Savannah, Georgia, built by Robert E. Lee when he was a young lieutenant in the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's called Fort Pulaski. Now, during the Civil War, Fort Pulaski was bombarded for, I believe, about 36 hours until the Confederate commander finally gave it up. But one of the things that the Union did to the fort was they surrounded it and cut all the communication lines. Right? So the fort had no way of getting information beyond what was their line of sight, which was not very far because it's a lot of trees and really kind of a jungle out there. And so there's no way of knowing just exactly what was going on in Savannah. Fort Pulaski was a very strategic point because it protected the river, the Savannah River. That was a large port city there, well, for its time. So literally, without intelligence, we are flying blind. Right? Good intelligence saves lives. Bad intelligence, no intelligence gets people killed. That is the plain and simple truth. Another story about why intelligence is just so important. Back during Vietnam, during the early years of Vietnam, we were losing a lot of fighter pilots to North Vietnamese MiGs, and the Soviet and Chinese advisors were also manning their radar stations, coordinating anti-aircraft fire. The unfortunate thing about that was that the NSA actually had information on these MiGs. All right, so they're Russian planes, they're fighter interceptors. They are purpose designed to go up, pop up out of nowhere, and shoot down adversary fighter jets. Well, the NSA, they knew where these MiGs were. Okay. The problem was that information was classified, so they couldn't get it to the air traffic controllers. They couldn't get it to the fighter pilots, the people that needed that information the most. It was just, it was sitting in some NSA station in Southeast Asia at the time. And, in all, we lost thousands of aircraft. Don't quote me on this. I think the number is as high as 10,000 aircraft during Vietnam. Well, NSA one day, they said, okay, look, we have to start getting this information out. They contacted the air traffic controllers and said, look, we have tactical information, okay? We can tell your pilots exactly where these MiGs are coming from, vector, distance, altitude, that sort of thing. But we need to be able to get in contact with the pilots. And the air traffic controller said, no, you can't talk directly to our pilots. You have to go through us. And NSA was like, no thanks, okay. All right? That's what we call the green door syndrome, all right? That we have this great intelligence information, but it's not getting into the hands of the people that need it the most. Well, finally, after a lot of debate, the NSA broke down. They said, okay, well, we can't tell you how we get this information. We can just tell you, where these MiGs are. And so finally, the NSA broke down. They started providing the information to Navy and Air Force air traffic control, and they ended up saving potentially thousands more pilots' lives. So, again, it goes to show, intelligence is no good. It doesn't no one any good if it is not getting into the hands of the people who need it the most. Right? We're in a very similar situation. Right? The intelligence that we get, the intelligence networks, the intelligence collection, I would say, is at a very minimal capability, very low, potentially non-existent, outside of mainstream and alternative media. Right? A lot of times, the only thing we get from the media is basically what they want us to know, which is problematic. So, before we get into intelligence collection, all right, I'm going to describe the kind of networks, the kind of intel collection we ought to be, the intelligence we ought to be chasing, gathering. But before we get to that, we really need to talk about security. All right, so Allen Dulles, who was the director of the CIA, after his death, they found these 73 rules for spycraft. And some CIA historian collected them, published them. Those 73 rules, first of all, are really great to read. But it begins and ends with security. Dulles' first rule of spycraft, he says, there are many skills that spies should strive for, right, but they should all be relegated to security. In short, if we don't have security, we don't have anything. Right? We could have the best intelligence in the world. We could have the best plans in the world. If we don't have a way to protect it, then we're up the creek without a paddle. And it really does not do us any good. If the adversary continually knows what we don't know, and in all of our planning. Today, we'll write these down for you. I'm fortunate in that I get to talk to a lot of people. Right? One of the very first questions that I ask a lot of people in class is, what is your mission? Right? There are typically two answers, right? They're the people who throw up their arms and say, I don't really know. Right? Typically those people are not in a group. Right? We cannot defend, you're not going to defend your homestead by yourself. Right? We have to be a part of a group. Right? We have to be part of a network, part of a community. Right? That is force multiplication of intelligence collection. Right? In the Army, we say every soldier is a sensor. Well, every patriot is a sensor as well. Right? No one person is as smart as all of us. So the more information we have coming in, the better off we are. So if we find ourselves in that group, or rather not in that group, we don't have a group, that's one of the very first things we should start doing is identifying your local community. Even if it's just one person, it's better than no persons. The second answer that I get is, well, to survive, which is, hey, that's a really great mission. All right, so we start from point A, and I say, okay, well, what is your plan to survive? All right, that's a big question mark. All right, step number 2 is, how do we get there? All right.